All right, spontaneous speaking video 102. So, it's been a while since I've done one of these, and if you're not familiar with what a spontaneous speaking video is, it's essentially a video where I speak extemporaneously on any topic that has popped into my mind at any given time. Just pull out my iPad and I just start talking. So I haven't really processed too much through the thoughts that I speak about in my spontaneous speaking videos, and there's no editing because it's kind of like a challenge to myself to be able to speak on the spot and have y'all walk through the thought process with me. Just something that might be fun for y'all as opposed to the edited versions of whatever I post out usually. And yeah, this is the 102nd one. If you want to check out any of my older spontaneous speaking videos, I have a playlist for that, as well as many other playlists that y'all can check out. But anyway, today what I wanted to talk about and what has been ringing through my mind is the idea of a safe space. So coincidentally, I believe that the reason why I haven't been posting too many spontaneous speaking videos lately is because I have both been formulating a lot of opinions and also wondering which opinions are worth sharing. I believe that I've been coming to one of the opinions I guess that I've been forming is the observation that as you're forming opinions for certain things, especially controversial opinions, they're controversial for a reason. And if people do not agree with you, then there's a difference between people who just agree to disagree versus people who will look at you in a very different way, in a very different light. And I know that there's this stigma of who cares what people think. I'm gonna just be honest. I care what people think. And I think that we all kind of should. There should be a balance. You shouldn't care too much about what people think, of course, but then you also should not really have such a disregard for what other people are thinking, because I think that a lot of people, their thoughts about you is what keeps you in check, kind of. If a lot of us, we would probably do way more heinous things if we weren't afraid of how other people would judge us. So to an extent, I believe that judgment can be good. And I'm realizing that this video could be a similar one to where I talked about is shame necessary, a previous video of mine, maybe about a year or two ago. But I've been realizing that I think that everyone really loves to talk about how, I just want to live in a judgment-free zone, and, I just want to speak without judgment, and this is that. And I always wonder, are you providing such a space for other people? I think that we very often are intolerant of many ideas, concepts, ways of thought, and then once we're intolerant of it, then we judge the person, whether internally or verbally, directly toward the person. And once we do that, a lot of things really tend to happen. First of all, it shames the person, so then the person's thoughts don't actually change toward the matter. Instead, what the person does is they just retract the thoughts and they hide it. But you haven't necessarily changed their mind on the opinion. You've just made them not want to share those opinions with you anymore. So they're still kind of the same person, just maybe less likely to share such opinions with you. And I think that, if you are someone who just cannot sit through, talk through, and handle certain opinions with people, that's fine. But I think in that case as well, you need to be aware of that. And number two, is it really fair of you to then say that you also want people to provide a non-judgmental, safe space for you, if you haven't even been able to do that for other people? So I think that that's something that I've been thinking about a lot, because I've been observing other people, who might share their opinions. And I actually might agree with them in a lot of ways, or even the places where I disagree with them, I'm like, ooh, I just saw how they got crucified in front of everyone. Maybe I should pull a Peter and be like, I don't know them. Of course I disagree with that. Come on now, really? And what do I look like? Am I stupid? But I sit down and I think about it, and I'm like, man, I start to feel bad for those people who are just hanging there crucified. Because it's not like they're trying to be evil. They have these thoughts, and this is how things make sense to them for whatever reasons, upbringing, usually it's upbringing, stuff like that. And I think that as long as they're willing to discuss their logic, I'm all about let's check the math, all right? Okay, you got this answer at the end. Let's see, did you carry the one? Did you, do this? All of that, people, I think that people do not have the patience to really sit through and understand somebody else's perspective. And then, once you do that, then help guide them toward the right perspective, if there's a right perspective to begin with. And especially when it comes to moral views. And that actually makes me really sad, because I think that all of us would agree that, hey, we were the type of children that we like to say why when our parents said don't do this or don't do that, and we hated it when our parents told us because I told you so. I think that today the modern I told you so, or because we said so kind of thing, is pretty much just saying it's bad, because it's bad, because it's wrong. So if you do it, you're going to jail, or you're gonna get stoned, even if it's metaphorically, or you're gonna get canceled, whatever it might be. And it's okay, well, in that case, I'm not necessarily gonna change my opinion on it, because there's no claims or reasoning that has been given to me to be able to switch my opinions. But I think I'm gonna be smart to hold it back. And once again, I feel sad for those people. I want to create a safe space for such people, because I think that there can be such people that are genuine minded, and want to change and want to. I feel like I'm one of those people, to be honest. I don't think that I have any off the wall type of crazy thoughts and opinions and stuff that'll just get me crucified or whatever. But I have some pretty wild opinions on things that I've formulated over time that I'm pretty positive that a lot of people would disagree with, and probably most likely wouldn't even want to take the time to hear out my thought process on it. And kind of makes me sad. And so then you just keep those opinions to yourself, because it's better to just keep those opinions to yourself, not act on them or whatever, of course. And a lot of them you can't even really act on anyway. It's just hypothetical situation. This is how I view it, whatever. And if you're being judged for that, how you would be in that hypothetical situation, or how you would think in that hypothetical situation, that may not ever even happen to begin with, well, what's the point of then sharing it, But it's always fun when you are able to share such things, and even if a person disagrees, you're able to just, flesh out your thoughts, and maybe they might even help guide you to the better thought process on it, or they can even just understand where you're coming from, and y'all can just agree to disagree. But no respect has been lost. Their perspective of you hasn't changed. They don't have to look at you. And the worst thing especially is using it against you. Well, I do know that you tend to have these. Wow, really? That's how we're doing it? Okay. Well, now I know not to share these thoughts with you anymore. Because, I don't know, that's just, it's messed up when stuff like that happens. So, what I'm saying today is, I'm calling us to self-introspect. I'm calling us to think about our deepest, darkest opinions. It's a trend nowadays, you know? Hop on Twitter, you see it all over the place. What's a controversial opinion of yours? What's your toxic trait? Everyone's gonna say things that's not really actually controversial. And I think it's corny, but then at the same time, I also think that it's smart. Because if we were really to say a lot of our actual controversial opinions, well, we get crucified. Like, we get canceled, you know? Controversial opinions equals crucifixion and cancellation. 3 C's right there. And nobody wants that, you know? So it's like, how about I just keep them close to the heart, and not share them with people unless I really trust them. But then if they never come out, if they're never shared, then how can they be challenged appropriately without the ad hominem, without the shame and the embarrassment? How can they be challenged in a way that would help me then to recalibrate whatever I think and still feel safe and still feel like whoever I've shared this thought with still sees me and respects me as well as they did before I shared that I was having these thoughts? How many people are hiding in their sea of controversial opinions that they're afraid to share, and they're just kind of like going along, you know? I think we need to create more safe spaces. And like I said, it just makes me sad when there's a lot of censorship, when there's a lot of, we're not allowed to say that, or how could you think such a thing? I think that, and I said this in the ENFJ Block Party video, but whatever people think makes sense to them. That's how I see it. And so, again, it goes back to the math thing. It's all about taking the time to actually dive into whatever their math was. What was their math behind the equation? Is it something that you can get more than one answer? I don't even think the math really works like that. You know what I mean? But hypothetically, if you can, or maybe there isn't even like a right or wrong answer, like, are you going to dive in and be able to actually figure out and understand where they're coming from, or are you just going to see the result of their answer and think that they're stupid, negligent, and just all of these things without even having seen, like, oh, I see where you went wrong over here, or oh, actually, you know what? I hadn't thought about doing it this way. You could be onto something. I feel like that's true open-mindedness. Granted, I also believe that an open mind should clamp shut after receiving truth. But then even then, I personally believe that for a lot of us, truth is subjective. There is an absolute truth, but our perception of the truth is subjective. So for a lot of things, not everything, of course, but for a lot of things, we can't ever actually say that we know the absolute truth. And that's a whole philosophy thing that we could probably get into. I think I've already explained this in other videos, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, either way, I think that the most important thing is just understanding where other people are coming from, holding space for them. When I was doing homework for my personality hacker profiler training certification, then I remember that the practitioner, the conductor of the whole system or whatever, she was talking about how, like, she gives like introductions for each Myers-Briggs type that we're gonna watch her profile. So there's a profiling session for each type that she's profiling. We get to like watch along, and we have to write a whole bunch of notes and homework and stuff like that. And for the ENTP one, she said that when she's profiling them, they tend to have a lot of bizarre and crazy like opinions on things that they're often very afraid to share. And that's usually how TI is, especially when it's higher up. It's like, I have all of these opinions, but I know how society is going to be like, and really wag that finger at me, so I'm not going to share it. Or, of course, sometimes they're like, no, I'm going to share these opinions whether y'all like it or not. I don't care if I get canceled, or they share a lot from the vault and then they still choose their battles. You know, there's a lot to go with it. But anyway, the practitioner, Melissa, that's her name, Melissa Harris, she said that somebody had submitted an ENTP profiling session, and this ENTP that the student was profiling just went on this whole thing very seriously about cannibalism and started thinking to them and started like explaining like why why did we ever stop cannibalism and this that. Of course, I didn't see that actual profiling session. I don't know the details of it. But Melissa's point was like she was really proud of the profiler for sitting down, having a straight face, accepting whatever the person was saying, whether they agreed or not, and just giving that person the space to be able to share their opinions and thoughts on all of these things. I think that's something that we should really learn to embrace, because as I know there's gonna be a lot of people who would watch this and like super like, oh, what, cannibalism or whatever. But I was really trying to think about it, and it's like, okay, how would this make sense to the person? You know, maybe in their head, you know, there is a difference between, oh, why don't we go killing other human beings and then eat them, versus, oh, why don't we just eat someone who I'm laughing because there's now someone here listening. But anyway, there's a difference between like, you know, killing someone just like right off bat and then eating them, versus like someone who is already deceased is just going to be buried underground to rot anyway. And if you're starving, then maybe that body can save somebody, you know? Again, I'm not saying that I support the idea of cannibalism or whatever, but I can see how somebody else might think like, oh, this makes sense. And there's still like subsets and categories of how this works. Like, okay, there's like, what do you mean by cannibalism? Like, do you mean, once again, like we should start killing people, we should start killing babies, like, or you mean like people who are already dead, or where's your mindset with that? But there's people who would just hear right away like, what, cannibalism? And then they don't even want to hear the rest of it. They're just gonna shut you down, they're gonna shame you, they're gonna cancel you, that's not really going to change the person's mindset on cannibalism. It's just going to be like, let me not share that thought anymore. And that's how you get people who start, you know, just keeping a lot of things to themselves. They never come out, they never calibrate, they never start to learn, okay, what can I do with these thoughts and ideas? Or like, are these really bad? Are these really good? Why is this bad? Why is this good? They don't have the space to be able to like hash it out with people. Once again, I don't believe that everyone is capable of sitting through and actually talking through these kinds of things. A lot of those reasons could be, you know, due to closed-mindedness, you know, and that's just what it is. A lot of it could be trauma, you know, so it's like if you've dealt with somebody who was, you know, killed by cannibalism or whatever like that, it's very understandable why you would not want to talk to somebody about why it's right or wrong, you know? Even like when it comes to like racism, like I had a situation where when I was serving one time, there was a group of old people that were just laughing and talking about why did slavery ever end, and it was great, or whatever, you know, stuff like that. And all of my coworkers were infuriated. It wasn't even my table. And I was like the only black guy that was working that night. And they were just like talking about, I can't believe that table and this is that. Finally, I was genuinely curious. So I went up to that table and I was like, hey, I'm not trying to pick a fight or anything, but I've been overhearing your conversation and I'm just so genuinely curious as to why you guys believe that, you know, like slavery shouldn't have ended and this, that. And they were really kind people, and they were surprised with me with how I approached them. And I sat and I really listened to all their reasoning. And after I listened to their math, I could see how it made sense to them in their heads. I corrected a few things like, oh, well, actually, slavery in the Bible was very different from how it was in America. You know, like in the Bible, they actually chose to be slaves. It wasn't based off of race. And after a few years, after they paid off their debts and everything like that, then they were free to go. Whereas like in America, that wasn't really the case. They didn't have a choice. So, you know, there was just a lot of things, you know, that we really talked through. And they said that they never were able to speak to a black person this long about almost anything. And so that showed just how much they had their perceptions change, and they said they wish they could meet more people like me and everything. And they left that day actually having a lot of their thoughts on slavery and everything shifted. I'd understand why a lot of people wouldn't even bother to go and speak to that group of old people, especially if maybe they have grandparents who faced slavery. Maybe they themselves are part of it. There's a lot of trauma that's there. But I think that the truth of the matter is that people are having thoughts. People have thoughts that are controversial, that are whatever, and you can't influence until you hear them out. People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And if you really care to hear where they're coming from, then if you really still feel inclined, you can help show them where you're coming from afterwards. And I think that if we had more people doing that with love, patience, mercy, being slow to rebuke, and just quicker to listen, I cannot imagine how much safer this world would be. So yeah, I really want to encourage us to be safe spaces for other people, and find a safe space as well for yourself. Shoot, I offer coaching, and the link is in my bio for my services and everything like that. If you want to spend a coaching session just talking to me, talking through some of your ideas and everything like that, whatever idea that you're bringing, try me. I will sit down and I will listen to you. I'll hear you out. I will hold back emotions and cussing you out over whatever. And I would just want to really hear where you're coming from. If I sense sincerity from you, no, this is just what I genuinely believe, this is what my history has taught me, whatever, and this is just what I think, this is my experiences, cool. And if we can just still talk things over, whatever, even if we still agree to disagree, hey, thanks for still sharing your opinion. At least now we've offered each other a different perspective. It's able to really hear out. That's the way that you calibrate. And I'd still respect you as a human being, but find someone for that and try to be that for other people. I think that's something that we really need to be careful. And this isn't even just a thinker-feeler thing. I think that both thinkers and feelers, they be having problems with this kind of thing. You'd be so surprised how quickly certain thinkers can just get riled up over certain ideas and values, and how many feelers can really just keep calm and actually listen. But at the end of the day, I think it just transcends that, and we just have to learn to just be more compassionate, and remember, there's a difference between people who are genuinely ill-intended. If those people at the table were why is this nigger just coming to my to our table or whatever, get away from us, and just started hurling insults at me, that would have been very different, But the fact that they treated me like a human being and spoke with me for a long time and listened whenever I spoke and didn't roll their eyes or anything, didn't interrupt, I think that says a lot, Those are people that are reasonable and just were misguided, and needed somebody who was patient enough to actually sit down and talk to them or whatever. And once again, that's not always the case. I don't always go in to certain situations thinking I need to just influence this person. It's no, I could learn some things. Maybe they might influence me, and then maybe I'll be the one who then keeps certain opinions to myself. Anyway, that's a lot of the thoughts that I had today. What do y'all think? Or not? Leave questions, comments, concerns. Self-reflect on this. If you have a controversial opinion and you are feeling bold to share it underneath, go ahead and do that. I want to hear them. If you want to have a coaching session with me, check out the bio. Email me, dz2bless@icloud.com. Subject coaching session. Put in your time zone, days that you're free, and we can chop it up. But yeah, I'm happy to just engage with y'all in that way. So yeah, thanks for listening, and done.